Ladies and gentlemen, Bengt ShlØeschler.
Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to start off with a little story just to dive in and get this ball rolling. I won't beat around the bush. It seems like only yesterday I couldn't see the forest for the trees. I was like a babe in the woods, left out in the cold, alone in the dark, without a leg to stand on, because I'd had the rug pulled out from under me and been hung out to dry. Why? Because I lost touch with my roots by constantly going out on a limb. And I realized I'd been barking up the wrong tree when I found myself holding the short end of the stick. Folks, I was at the end of my rope. It seemed like I'd been against the rope for years, fighting tooth and nail and swinging wildly just to roll with the punches and avoid being knocked down for the count. And where I'd once tossed my hat into the ring, I was now ready to throw in the towel. Clearly, my world was going to hell in a handbasket. It seemed like no good deed had gone unpunished. And burning the candle at both ends with my feet to the fire, I couldn't see that choosing the lesser of two evils failed to address the devil in the details. And all that stabbing in the dark was like trying to get blood from the stone and hadn't given me a snowball's chance. Now the hell was freezing over. Then, my friends, just when I was ready to give up the ghost, I saw some green shoots of light at the end of the tunnel. Slow but sure, I would realize that the best was yet to come, that hope springs eternal, and yes, good things do come in small packages. Eureka. Just what the doctor ordered, and right in the nick of time. And like during the calm before the storm, my tide started to turn, and in what seemed like the blink of an eye, I was once again floating on cloud nine. Now, folks, if you've had the wind taken out of your sail and are barely staying afloat, well, I see your ship has just come in. All you have to do is quit rocking the boat and get on board by hook or by crook, because where there's thunder, there's lightning, just like when it rains it pours. So batten down the hatches, because the jig is up. Now that it's sink or swim time, I can help you keep your head above water if you'll just join me and take the plunge. Old habits die hard. Old habits die hard. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. The longer we grow in the tooth, the more our bark becomes worse than our bite. Let's talk turkey. When you were a spring chicken, I'll bet you were quite the eager beaver, biting the hand that feeds you as you chased after the golden goose like a fox in the hen house. But perhaps you looked that gift horse in the mouth and started getting a bird's eye view of a dog-eat-dog world. And the longer you spent swimming upstream, the more you discovered there are plenty of fish in the sea. Once you opened that can of worms, well, the cat was out of the bag, and you went from being as busy as a bee to having ants in your pants. So let me put this bug in your ear. Maybe being a fly in the ointment was the straw that broke Campbell's back and your chickens finally came home to roost. Now that they've flown the coop, you're like a fish out of water, flying solo like a canary in a coal mine, once bitten, twice shy, because you led yourself like a lamb to the slaughter straight into the lion's den. And between you and me and the fence post, you've been eating crow ever since. Now, you can chomp at the bit until the cows come home, but at some point you have to grab the bull by the horns. My friends, if you want to bring home the bacon, you've got to wake up and smell the coffee. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You can't bite off more than you can chew by putting all of your eggs in one basket and claiming there are too many cooks in the kitchen because you have bigger fish to fry. For instead of becoming the icing on the cake, you will just end up a flash in the pan that was moved to the back burner because the whole time you spent being the pot calling the kettle black, the proof was in the pudding. Folks, that's just the way the cookie crumbles when you're not willing to drink the Kool-Aid. Now, you're no longer that kid in the candy store sowing your wild oats. So let me help you get your ducks in a row before your goose is cooked. Trust me, this is not my first time at the barbecue. Something out of nothing. Something out of nothing. There's no two ways about it, folks. It's feast or famine. We're darned if we do, darned if we don't. Caught between a rock and a hard place is neither here nor there. No matter how you slice it, it's a double-edged sword that cuts both ways. On the one hand, patience is a virtue because haste makes waste. We must always look before we leap. On the other, he who hesitates is lost because the early bird gets the worm. You snooze, you lose. And while curiosity killed the cat, you never know until you try. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? We're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but there's no second chance to make a first impression. And while money can't buy you happiness, well, you can't argue with success. Keeping in the loop while thinking outside the box, well, it's all enough to make your head spin, isn't it? The sky is the limit if you keep your feet firmly planted. Make up your mind, but keep your options open. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and out of adversity comes opportunity, and when the going gets tough, well, another door opens, right? You see, the more things change, the more they stay the same. History repeats itself. Let me say that one more time. History never repeats itself. Everything old is new again. Now, maybe it sounds like I'm reading you the riot act or selling you down the river, hook, line, and sinker, while you're stuck up the creek without a paddle. But friends, I'm not here to rain on your parade, burst your bubble, or upset the apple cart. So let's bury that hatchet right now. I have no axe to grind, no desire to throw a wrench into the works. I simply want to remind you that you're still just a cog in a wheel who needs to get back down to brass tacks. You will hit that nail on the head if you just wait to strike while the iron is hot. And like I said, when you were still wet behind the ears, nobody could tell you how the cow ate the cabbage. You were the be-all and end-all, the cat's pajamas all cut from a loose cloth. But now it seems you're coming apart at the seams, sticking your finger in the dike just to stop the bleeding before it all becomes water under the bridge. So yes, I'm going to stick in your craw like a thorn in your side and be that squeaky hinge that gets the oil. Because, not to make a mountain out of a molehill, but you are headed down a slippery slope with all this skating on thin ice. You need to draw a line in the sand. Now, the clock is ticking, so let's get this show on the road before you get thrown under the bus. Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. Now, if you feel like you're getting thrown under the bus, you need to take 2 steps back. Pause for the cause. Then, once you regain a little spring in your step, you can once again get off the ground by putting your best foot forward and learning to walk before you can run. We're not reinventing the wheel here, people. I'm just bringing you back up to speed. That way, when the rubber does meet the road, you can hit the ground running, with a pedal to the metal and a tiger in your tank, firing on all cylinders and ready to turn on a dime. So let's shift gears and cut to the chase. It's time to get back in the saddle. Just stop putting the cart before the horse and flying by the seat of your pants. It's time to pull up your socks, tighten your belt, and buckle down. You'll need to gird your loins and take no prisoners. To grit your teeth, bite the bullet, put your nose to the grindstone, holding your ear to the ground and keeping your eyes peeled. Holding that chin up and keeping a stiff upper lip. Then take a good long look in the mirror and ask yourself if the shoe fits, now that it's on the other foot. You see, if you hold your shoulder to the wind without sticking your neck out, you can wear your heart on your sleeve without turning the other cheek. No longer footloose and fancy-free, you'll once again be able to face the music, playing second fiddle to no one, now that you've stopped marching to the beat of a different drummer and realize that he who pays the piper calls a tune. It's the same old song. Being penny wise and pound foolish has so far only left you a day late and a dollar short. So the buck stops here. Like my daddy said to me, money doesn't grow on trees. And you can take that to the bank, because now here I stand, a chip off the old block, jumping on the bandwagon and smelling like roses. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It takes one to know one. Keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball. Now, if you want to score points, everybody, you've got to step up to the plate and play to win. And that means covering all your bases. You can't always stick to the game plan when there isn't a level playing field. What separates the men from the boys is knowing that sometimes the best offense is a good defense. So you may have to take one for the team and sit one out on the sidelines while someone else hits one out of the ballpark. But it's a crapshoot. Playing the hand you're dealt close to your vest usually beats laying all your cards on the table face up. Let's call a spade a spade. 10 will give you 20, that having an ace in the hole will trump a jack of all trades when the chips are down, especially if you're not playing with a full deck. So let the chips fall as they may, and think twice about being quick on the draw. Walking around with an itchy trigger finger, cocked and loaded and always shooting from the hip will only serve to place you in the crosshairs. But if you stick to your guns and aim high without always coming out both barrels blazing, You just might dodge a bullet, because it's still better to tread softly and carry a big stick than to be constantly walking on eggshells. You can dot your I's and cross your T's while still minding your P's and Q's and not pushing the envelope from A to Z. Just to connect the dots so we're on the same wavelength, the best way to stay under the radar is to stop your broadcasting and start tuning in. In a nutshell, doesn't time fly when we're having fun? My friends, finding your place in the sun is no walk in the park, especially when you're up to your ass in alligators. Because you can run, but you can't hide. Anyway, this whole ball of wax today is simply grist for the mill. Let's call it a heads up to remind you that you reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. So you may as well keep it real. In a nutshell, all things being equal, push come to shove, when it's all said and done, at the end of the day, you have to go with what you know. Because when the smoke clears and the dust settles, what you see is what you get. It is what it is. So no worries. It's all good. Thank you. Thank you. That's all she wrote. Thank you. Do you prefer the wide receiver or the tight end?